They say marriage is like a software update. You know it's necessary, but you never really want to deal with it, and somehow it always makes things worse than before. My name is Ethan Drake, and after 15 years of matrimonial bliss with Amelia, I've learned that some updates come with malware you never saw coming. I'm an IT security architect, which means I spend my days protecting other people's secrets while my own life gets hacked from the inside. The irony isn't lost on me. At 39, I thought I had figured out the algorithm of suburban happiness. Decent house in Millbrook Heights, 2 daughters who still think I'm funny, and a wife who used to laugh at my jokes instead of rolling her eyes like I'm some outdated operating system. But lately, something's been running in the background, consuming resources, slowing everything down. "Daddy, why does Mom always look angry when she looks at you?" Lily asked me last Tuesday over breakfast. She's 11, sharp as a blade, notices everything. Her younger sister Emma, 8, and still believing the world is fundamentally good, kicked her under the table. "Mom's just busy with work stuff," I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. Amelia's been putting in long hours as HR director at Meridian Corp, coming home after the girls are in bed, leaving before they wake up. But busy doesn't explain the way she flinches when I touch her shoulder, or how she guards her phone like it contains state secrets. That evening, I tried the direct approach. Amelia was in our bedroom, laptop open, typing furiously. Her auburn hair fell across her face in a way that used to make my heart skip. Now it just looked like a curtain she was hiding behind. "Hey," I said, sitting on the edge of our bed. "The girls miss you. I miss you." She didn't look up from her screen. "I'm working, Ethan." "It's 9 p.m. on a Tuesday?" Some of us have demanding careers. The dig landed exactly where she intended. My job pays well, but I work from home 3 days a week, handle school pickup, make dinner. Apparently this makes me less ambitious in her eyes, not more devoted. I reached over and gently closed her laptop. "Talk to me. What's going on?" Finally, she looked at me, and what I saw in her green eyes wasn't fatigue or stress. It was contempt. Pure, undiluted contempt. "You really want to know?" she said, her voice cold as January morning. "You bore me, Ethan. Everything about you bores me. The way you chew your cereal, the way you laugh at your own jokes, the way you think being a good father makes up for being a terrible husband." I felt like she'd just reformatted my hard drive. "Amelia, what? And in bed?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're so pathetic at it. I don't even feel guilty anymore." Guilty. The word hung in the air like malware waiting to execute. Guilty about what? But she'd already opened her laptop again, dismissing me like a pop-up ad. "Figure it out, genius. You're supposed to be good with computers." I stood there for a moment, processing. Then I walked to our closet, pulled out her largest suitcase, and began packing her clothes. Methodically, carefully. Every designer blouse, every expensive dress, every pair of shoes that cost more than most people's rent. "What are you doing?" she asked, finally looking up. I didn't answer. I carried the suitcase to the hallway and set it down by the front door. Then I went to my home office and printed out every bill, every bank statement, every financial document for the past year. I arranged them in neat stacks on the kitchen table, along with a calculator and a pen. When I returned to the bedroom, Amelia was staring at me like I'd just grown a second head. "Your half," I said simply. "Figure out how you're going to pay it." For the first time in months, I had her complete attention. "You can't be serious." "We're serious," I said, then caught myself. "Completely serious." "You want out? There's the door. There's your stuff. There's your responsibility. Choose." She laughed again, that same cold sound. "You don't have the spine for this, Ethan. You'll be begging me to come back by morning." I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I was seeing a stranger. When had she become this person? When had I become someone she could dismiss so casually? "We'll see," I said, and walked out. That night, I changed every password on every account we shared. Bank accounts, streaming services, credit cards, utilities, everything. While Amelia slept peacefully beside me, apparently convinced I was bluffing, I worked through the night like a man possessed. By dawn, I had also done something else. I'd sent a carefully worded email to Meridian Corp's ethics hotline about potential misuse of company travel reimbursements. Nothing accusatory, just a concerned citizen asking if they were aware that one of their employees had been claiming business trips to locations that seemed more recreational than professional. Because here's what 15 years of marriage had taught me. Amelia never did anything without a paper trail, and she never went anywhere without posting about it on social media. Cross-referencing her Instagram posts with her expense reports had taken me exactly 47 minutes. The sun was coming up when I finally closed my laptop. Amelia stirred beside me, reaching across the bed like she had every morning for 15 years. Her hand found empty space. I was already in the kitchen, making coffee, waiting for her to discover that her comfortable little world had just experienced a critical system failure, and I was the one holding the restore point. The scream that came from upstairs at 7:23 a.m. told me Amelia had discovered her first surprise of the day. I was in the kitchen, making pancakes for Lily and Emma, when my wife's voice echoed through the house like a banshee warning of incoming doom. "Ethan, what did you do?" Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I flipped a pancake with the calm precision of a man who had spent all night preparing for this moment. The girls looked up from their orange juice, eyes wide. "Is Mom okay?" Emma asked, her voice small. "Mom's just having some technical difficulties," I said. "Nothing that can't be resolved." Amelia appeared in the doorway, wearing her silk robe and an expression that could have melted steel. Her phone was clutched in her hand like a weapon. "My accounts," she hissed. "You locked me out of my own accounts." "Our accounts," I corrected, sliding pancakes onto the girls' plates. "And I didn't lock you out. I just updated the security protocols. You know how important cybersecurity is these days. This is ridiculous. Change them back, now." I looked at her calmly while pouring syrup for Emma. "I'll be happy to discuss account access once we've had a chance to review those financial documents I left for you. Did you have a chance to look them over?" The way her jaw clenched told me she hadn't even glanced at them. "Girls, finish your breakfast," she said through gritted teeth. "Daddy and I need to have a grown-up conversation." "Actually," I said, checking my watch, "I need to get them to school. We can talk tonight. Unless you have other plans?" The question hung in the air like a virus scan running in the background. Amelia's face went through several expressions before settling on forced sweetness. "Of course I don't have other plans. We'll talk tonight." But as I loaded the girls into my car, I caught her on her phone, speaking in low, urgent tones. Through the open window, I heard fragments. "Can't access anything," and "he's finally lost it," and most interestingly, "need to see you today." After dropping the girls at school, I made my first real move. I called Premier Towing. "Yeah, I need a vehicle removed from the Meridian Court parking lot," I said. "Silver BMW, license plate AME 2019. It's blocking a fire lane." "We'll need verification from building management or—" "I'm the owner," I said, which was technically true. The car was registered in both our names. "I can provide documentation." An hour later, I was parked across from Amelia's office building, watching through binoculars as she discovered her car was missing. Even from a distance, I could see her frantically searching the parking lot, phone pressed to her ear. She was wearing her red power suit, the one she claimed made her feel invincible. She looked pretty vincible right now. My phone buzzed. Text from Amelia. "Where's my car?" I texted back. "Impound lot on 5th Street. They take cash or credit." "Oh, wait." 20 minutes later, another text. "This isn't funny, Ethan." "You're right," I replied. "It's not funny, it's educational." While Amelia dealt with her transportation crisis, I made my second move. I called Julia Hendricks, Amelia's closest friend and biggest enabler. Julia was the type of woman who lived for drama as long as it wasn't her own. "Ethan, how are you? I haven't seen you and Amelia in ages." "That's actually why I'm calling Julia. I'm worried about her." "Worried? Why?" I let concern creep into my voice. "She's been acting strange lately. Secretive, coming home late, taking mysterious phone calls. I'm starting to wonder if she's having some kind of midlife crisis." "Oh, honey," Julia said, and I could practically hear her settling in for gossip. "What kind of strange behavior?" "Well, I probably shouldn't say anything, but yesterday I overheard her on the phone with someone talking about how boring her life is, how she needs excitement, and then there's all these unexplained charges on our credit card. Expensive restaurants, hotels, places we've never been together." "That does sound concerning," Julia said, though her tone suggested she was more intrigued than concerned. "I just don't know what to do. Maybe you could talk to her, as her friend, see if she opens up about what's really going on?" "Of course, Ethan. I'll reach out to her today." "Thanks, Julia. I just want my wife back, you know?" After I hung up, I made similar calls to 2 other women in Amelia's social circle. Not accusations, just worried husband expressing concern about his wife's unusual behavior. By lunchtime, the Whisper network would be buzzing with speculation about Amelia Drake's mysterious activities. My phone rang at 2:17 p.m. Amelia calling from her office landline. "You manipulative bastard," she said without preamble. "Hello to you too, darling. How was your morning?" Julia called me, and Sarah, and Michelle. They're all asking if I'm having an affair. Are you? The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then, you have no idea what you're messing with, Ethan. Enlighten me. Change the passwords back. Return my car. Stop this childish game before you regret it. Or what? Another pause. Then her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow sounded more threatening than shouting. You think you're so smart, sitting in your little home office, playing with your computers. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I'm not the same woman you married. Finally, I said, something we agree on. The line went quiet. She'd hung up. I sat back in my chair, feeling something I hadn't experienced in years, the thrill of being truly alive. For too long, I'd been a supporting character in my own life, the reliable husband who paid the bills and picked up the kids while his wife lived her real life elsewhere. Not anymore. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Back off, or you'll regret it. I screenshot the message and saved it to a folder I'd created that morning, a folder I'd labeled Evidence. Because here's what Amelia didn't understand about her boring, predictable husband. I'd spent 15 years in cybersecurity, learning to think like the enemy, to anticipate attacks, to build defenses that could withstand any assault. And now she wasn't just my wife anymore. She was the enemy. By Thursday morning, the Whisper Network had done its work. I could tell because Amelia came downstairs looking like she hadn't slept. Her usual perfect composure cracked around the edges. The girls need to see us getting along, she said without looking at me, pouring coffee with shaking hands. I agree completely, I said. Nothing's more important than family stability. She shot me a look that could have crashed a server. I mean it, Ethan. Whatever you think you're doing, we need to present a united front. Absolutely. Speaking of which, Emma's teacher wants to meet with both of us about her reading progress. Are you available Tuesday at 3? She paused, and I watched her mental calendar scroll through whatever commitments she'd made. I'll make it work. Great. I'll send you a calendar invite. Oh wait, I'll need your new email address since you can't access the old one. Her coffee mug hit the counter harder than necessary. This is insane, Ethan. You can't just lock me out of my own life. I'm not locking you out of anything. I'm just requiring authentication for access to our shared resources. Basic security protocol. The sound that came from her throat was somewhere between a growl and a scream, but she couldn't say more because Lily wandered into the kitchen, backpack slung over her shoulder. Are you guys fighting? She asked with the directness that only 11-year-olds possess. Just discussing logistics, sweetheart, I said, kissing the top of her head. Sometimes grown-ups have to work out complicated stuff. Like when you have to debug code? Lily asked. She'd inherited my logical mind, much to Amelia's frustration. Exactly like that. Sometimes you have to trace through every line to find where the problem started. Amelia's face went pale, but she forced a smile. Daddy's right. We're just debugging. After I dropped the girls at school, I implemented phase 2 of my plan. I drove to Pinnacle Realty, the high-end firm where Greg Carter worked. I'd done my research on Greg, 42, divorced, drove a red Porsche that cost more than most people's houses, and had a reputation for closing deals through charm and connections rather than competence. I parked across the street and waited. At 10:47 a.m., Greg emerged from the building wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. He was exactly what I'd expected. Tall, artificially tanned, with the kind of confident swagger that came from never facing real consequences. He climbed into his precious Porsche and drove off, probably to meet my wife for their Thursday morning rendezvous. I waited 5 more minutes, then called Premier Towing again. Yeah, I need that red Porsche moved from the Pinnacle Realty lot. License plate closer 1. Owner requested it. Same deal as yesterday? Same deal. While Greg's car was being relocated to the impound lot, I made my way to Starbucks 3 blocks from Amelia's office. The same Starbucks where, according to her credit card statements, she'd been having a lot of expensive coffee dates lately. I didn't have to wait long. At 11:23, Amelia walked in, phone pressed to her ear, looking frantic. Don't know how he found out, but he's systematically dismantling everything, she was saying. She ordered her usual, grande vanilla latte with oat milk, and sat at a corner table. I was positioned behind a pillar where I could hear but not be seen. Laptop open, looking like any other remote worker. Car was impounded, accounts are locked, and now all my friends are asking questions. Her voice was strained, desperate. Need to accelerate our timeline. Our timeline. Interesting. He's not as stupid as we thought. We might need to consider the nuclear option. Nuclear option? I opened my phone's voice recorder app. Transfer everything to the offshore account before he figures out about the Cayman setup. she continued. Once the divorce is final, we can liquidate his retirement funds and disappear. I nearly dropped my phone. Offshore account? Cayman setup? This wasn't just an affair. This was financial warfare. Greg, I know your car got towed too, but that's not a coincidence. He's targeting both of us. She paused, listening. What do you mean? How does he know about us? Of course he knows. The question is how much he knows. She was quiet for several minutes, then, Fine, meet me at the usual place tonight. We need to figure out how to neutralize him before this gets worse. Neutralize. The word sent ice water through my veins. Amelia ended the call and sat staring at her phone for a long moment. Then she opened her laptop and began typing furiously. I angled my position to get a glimpse of her screen. She was on a banking website I didn't recognize. The header said Cayman International Trust Services. My wife wasn't just cheating on me, she was stealing from me. Had been for months, maybe years, systematically moving our assets offshore in preparation for what she probably thought would be a surprise divorce that left me with nothing. I took photos of everything I could see, then quietly packed up my laptop. I had what I needed. But as I stood to leave, Amelia's phone rang. She answered it immediately. What do you mean, they're asking questions at work? Her voice shot up an octave. Who's asking questions? Anonymous tip about what? I smiled as I walked past her table. She was so focused on her call that she didn't even notice me. Expense reports? What about my expense reports? They want to see documentation for what trips? I was almost to the door when I heard her say, Oh God, he's not just trying to divorce me, he's trying to destroy me. Finally, she was beginning to understand. Outside, I called the impound lot to check on Greg's Porsche. Then I called a local print shop that offered 24-hour service. Because if Amelia wanted to play nuclear, I was about to show her what a real meltdown looked like. My phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. Last warning. Back off now or face the consequences. I texted back, looking forward to it. Then I forwarded the message to my lawyer, along with a note. Please add to evidence file. Harassment escalating. The game was just getting started. Friday night was the Hendricks annual neighborhood barbecue, one of those mandatory suburban social events where everyone pretended to be friends while secretly cataloging each other's failures. Usually, I'd make an appearance, eat a burger, and escape as quickly as possible. This year, I had different plans. I arrived fashionably late with Lily and Emma in tow, carrying a casserole dish that had been in our family for 3 generations. The girls ran off to join the other kids, leaving me to navigate the social minefield alone. Ethan! Julia Hendricks appeared beside me with the eager sharpness of a predator spotting an opening. I'm so glad you came. How are you holding up? Holding up? Well, with everything that's been happening with Amelia, she lowered her voice conspiratorially. We're all so concerned. Perfect. The Gossip Network had done exactly what I'd hoped. I appreciate that, Julia. It's been challenging. Have you two considered counseling? Marriage can be so difficult when one person starts acting out. Before I could respond, I spotted Amelia across the yard. She was talking to Sarah Mitchell and Michelle Torres, her body language defensive, hands gesturing emphatically. Even from a distance, I could tell she was in damage control mode. Excuse me, I said to Julia. I should probably go support my wife. I made my way through the crowd, catching fragments of conversation as I passed. Heard she's been missing work. And poor Ethan, he looked so tired. When I reached Amelia's group, she was in the middle of what sounded like a well-rehearsed explanation. Just been working on a big project that requires a lot of travel. You know how demanding corporate life can be. Of course, Sarah said, but her tone suggested she wasn't buying it. Though Julia mentioned you seemed stressed about something? Amelia's eyes found mine over Sarah's shoulder, and for a moment I saw pure panic. Honey, I said, sliding an arm around her waist. She stiffened but didn't pull away. I was just telling Julia how proud I am of how hard you've been working lately. Yes, Amelia said through gritted teeth. It's been very intensive. All those late nights, weekend trips, I continued, my voice warm with admiration. I keep telling her she needs to slow down, but she's so dedicated to her clients. Clients? Michelle asked. I thought you worked in HR? The silence that followed was beautiful in its awkwardness. Amelia's face cycled through several expressions before settling on forced laughter. Ethan means our internal clients, other departments. You know how it is. Of course, I said. Though I have to admit, some of those business trips seemed more like vacation destinations. Remember that conference in Cabo last month? Amelia's grip on her wine glass tightened. That was a legitimate corporate retreat. Absolutely, very exclusive. Just you and one other attendee, right? The temperature in our little circle seemed to drop 10 degrees. Sarah and Michelle exchanged glances that spoke volumes. Well, Sarah said finally, we should let you two enjoy the party. Tom's been asking about your new security system, Ethan. He's thinking of upgrading ours. As they walked away, I could hear them whispering before they were even out of earshot. What the hell are you doing? Amelia hissed once we were alone. Supporting my wife at a social function. Isn't that what you wanted? You're making me look like a liar. I'm just sharing details about your busy schedule. If that makes you look like a liar, maybe we should examine why. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her face went white. Problem? I asked. I need to make a call. Of course. Don't let me stop you. She walked toward the house, phone already pressed to her ear. I followed at a discreet distance, using the crowd as cover. It's getting worse, she was saying. He's humiliating me in public. I positioned myself near the kitchen window where I could hear through the screen. No, I can't just leave. He's got everything locked down. Greg, listen to me. We need to move faster. Tonight. Tonight? That was new information. Meet me at the storage unit at midnight. We'll move everything to your place until we can figure out the next step. Storage unit. I made a mental note to check our credit card statements for any storage facility charges. What do you mean, you can't? Your car is just impounded, not destroyed. Fine, I'll pick you up. She ended the call and stood there for a moment, staring at her phone. When she turned around, I was right behind her. Everything okay? I asked. She jumped like I just materialized from thin air. Jesus, Ethan, you scared me. Sorry, you looked upset. Bad news? Just work, stuff, crisis at the office. On a Friday night? That's dedication. Yes, well, some of us take our responsibilities seriously. The barb was intended to sting, but I just smiled. Speaking of responsibilities, I've been thinking about our financial situation. What about it? Well, with all these mysterious charges on our credit cards and your accounts being temporarily inaccessible, I thought it might be wise to consolidate our resources. What does that mean? I've moved our savings into a trust fund for the girls. You know, for their college education, tax advantages and all that. The color drained from her face completely. You did what? Don't worry, it's all perfectly legal. I had our lawyer draw up the paperwork yesterday. The girls' futures are now completely secure. Ethan, you can't just what? Protect our children's financial future? I thought you'd be pleased. She stared at me like I just announced I was joining a cult. How much did you move? Everything in savings, the college funds, the emergency account, even that little nest egg you thought I didn't know about. I paused for effect. The one in the Cayman Islands. If she'd been pale before, she was now practically transparent. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course not. My mistake. Must have been thinking of someone else's offshore account. Her hands were shaking now. Actually shaking. I need to go home, she said. Sure, I'll get the girls. No. The word came out sharper than she'd intended. Several people nearby turned to look. She lowered her voice. I mean, let them stay and play. I just have a headache. Of course. Will you be home later? I thought we could finally have that talk we've been putting off. Yes, later. But I knew she wouldn't be home later. She'd be at a storage unit somewhere, trying to salvage whatever remained of her exit strategy. Which was perfect, because I had plans of my own. As Amelia hurried toward her car, I pulled out my phone and opened an app I'd installed that morning, a GPS tracker linked to the spare key fob in my pocket. Time to see exactly what my wife had been hiding. I followed Amelia's GPS signal to a storage facility on the outskirts of town, staying far enough back to avoid detection. She met Greg in the parking lot. He'd apparently managed to retrieve his Porsche from impound, and together they entered Unit 247. From my position behind a neighboring building, I couldn't see what they were moving, but the activity was frantic. Multiple trips back and forth, heavy boxes, what looked like file folders. After 47 minutes, they locked up and drove away in separate directions. I waited another hour, then made my approach. The storage facility had decent security, but decent wasn't enough when you knew what to look for. The lock on Unit 247 was electronic, the kind that logged access times and codes. More importantly, it was the kind that could be bypassed if you understood the underlying software architecture. It took me 18 minutes to gain access. Inside, I found the smoking gun I'd been looking for, boxes of financial documents, real estate contracts, and a laptop that Greg had apparently forgotten in his haste. But the real treasure was a manila folder labeled Exit Strategy in Amelia's handwriting. I photographed everything, but the laptop was the crown jewel. Greg hadn't even bothered to password protect it, and his browser was still logged into several accounts. Bank records, email correspondence, even a detailed timeline of their plan to systematically drain our assets and disappear. The scope of their scheme was breathtaking. They'd been planning this for over a year, slowly moving money through a network of shell companies and offshore accounts. The plan was to trigger a messy divorce, claim I was mentally unstable, and walk away with everything while I was tied up in legal battles. But the most damning evidence was in Greg's email drafts, messages he'd apparently written but never sent, detailing backup plans that made my skin crawl. If the financial manipulation didn't work, they were prepared to escalate to more serious measures. I copied everything to a secure drive, then returned the laptop to its original position. They needed to believe their hiding place was still secret. By the time I got home, it was after 2 a.m. Amelia's car was in the driveway, but the house was dark. I found her in our bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, still fully dressed. "How is your headache?" I asked. She looked up, and in the dim light from the hallway, I could see she'd been crying. "Ethan, we need to talk." "I'm listening." "I know you think I'm a terrible person." "I don't think you're a terrible person, Amelia. I think you're a criminal." The words hung in the air like a virus waiting to execute. She stared at me, mouth slightly open. "I know about the offshore accounts. I know about the shell companies. I know about the storage unit and the exit strategy and the plan to claim I'm mentally unstable." Her face went through several expressions before settling on something I'd never seen before, a genuine fear. "How could you possibly?" "Because I'm good at my job, Amelia. Really good. And you made the mistake of treating this like a game instead of recognizing it for what it really is, war." I sat down in the chair across from our bed, far enough away that she couldn't reach me, close enough that she couldn't mistake my intent. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice calm and steady. "Tomorrow morning, you're going to transfer every penny back from every account you've hidden. You're going to dissolve every shell company, close every offshore arrangement, and return every asset you've stolen." "I haven't stolen anything." "Then you're going to pack your things and leave, permanently. You can take your personal belongings and your car, assuming you can afford the insurance payments without access to our joint accounts." "Ethan, please." "I'm not finished." My voice cut through her pleading like a blade. "You're going to sign custody papers giving me primary custody of Lily and Emma. You can have supervised visitation once a month, assuming you can pass a psychological evaluation." She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in black streams. "You can't do this. I'm their mother." "You were their mother. Now you're just a woman who chose a con artist over her own children." Greg is a twice-divorced sociopath with gambling debts and a cocaine habit. Did you really think I wouldn't run a background check?" The look on her face told me she hadn't known about the cocaine. "You have until Monday morning to comply with my terms," I continued. "If you don't, I'll be making some phone calls. The IRS is very interested in unreported offshore income. The FBI has a whole department dedicated to financial fraud, and your employer has very strict policies about employees who use company resources for personal criminal enterprises. This is insane. You can't just—" "I already have." I stood up, looking down at her. "The only question now is whether you leave quietly or whether you leave in handcuffs." I walked to the door, then turned back. "Oh, and Amelia, if you or Greg try to contact me, threaten me, or interfere with my relationship with our daughters in any way, I'll release everything I've collected to every social media platform, every local news outlet, and every person in your professional network. Your choice." I left her sitting there in the dark and went to sleep in the guest room. For the first time in months, I slept peacefully. Sunday morning brought the reckoning I'd been building toward for weeks. I woke to find Amelia in the kitchen, fully dressed, 2 suitcases by the door. She looked like she'd aged 5 years overnight, her usual polish replaced by the hollow-eyed exhaustion of someone who'd finally run out of options. "The transfers are complete," she said without looking at me. "Everything's back in the original accounts." I checked my phone, verifying the bank notifications that had been arriving since dawn. She was telling the truth. "And the shell companies?" "Dissolved. It'll take a few days for all the paperwork to process, but they're gone." "Greg?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Greg is on a plane to somewhere without extradition treaties. Apparently his gambling debts were more serious than he let on." I poured myself coffee, noting that she'd made a full pot out of habit, even though she wouldn't be staying to drink any. "The girls don't know yet," she said. "They will, when they're ready to understand." "What are you going to tell them?" I considered this. Lily would figure it out eventually. She was too smart not to piece together the truth. Emma would need a gentler explanation, something about how sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that can't be fixed. That you made choices that hurt our family, and now you have to live with the consequences? She nodded, tears starting again. Can I say goodbye to them? They're at Ryan's house for a sleepover. I thought it would be easier this way. Easier for who? For everyone. She picked up her purse, checked her phone one last time, then looked at me with something that might have been regret. I never meant for it to go this far, she said. Yes, you did. You planned every step of it. I meant I never meant to hurt the girls. Yeah, but you were willing to. That's what makes this unforgivable. She walked to the door, then stopped with her hand on the handle. You know, for someone who claims to be so moral, you've been pretty ruthless yourself. The difference, I said, is that everything I did was legal, and everything I did was to protect my children from their mother's criminal behavior. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Goodbye, Amelia. Goodbye, Ethan. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and just like that, 15 years of marriage ended not with a bang, but with a whisper. I stood at the window and watched her load her suitcases into her car. She sat behind the wheel for a long moment, staring at the house we'd bought together, where we'd raised our daughters, where we'd built what I thought was a life. Then she drove away. I spent the rest of the morning cleaning house, literally and figuratively. I changed the locks, updated the security system, and called our lawyer to confirm that all the paperwork was in order. By the time I picked up Lily and Emma that afternoon, there was no trace of Amelia left in our home. Where's Mom? Emma asked as we pulled into the driveway. She had to go away for a while, I said, which was true enough. How long? Lily asked, and I could hear the suspicion in her voice. I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe a very long time. That evening, after the girls were in bed, I sat in my home office and opened a new document on my computer. I titled it Lessons Learned and began typing. Marriage, like any complex system, requires constant maintenance and monitoring. Ignore the warning signs at your own peril. Trust, once compromised, cannot be restored with simple patches. Sometimes you need to wipe the drive and start over. The most dangerous threats come from inside your own network. The people with legitimate access can do more damage than any external attacker. And sometimes, the only way to protect what matters most is to cut off the infected parts before they can spread. I saved the document and closed the laptop. Outside, it was starting to rain, a gentle spring shower that would wash the last of winter away and make room for new growth. I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the water run down the glass. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Everything okay over there? I typed back, System restored, all threats neutralized. Good man. Let me know if you need anything. Thanks. I think we're going to be fine. And for the first time in months, I actually believed it. Upstairs, I could hear Emma talking in her sleep, probably dreaming about school or friends or the thousand small things that filled a child's world. Lily's room was quiet, but I knew she was awake, processing everything with that sharp mind of hers. Tomorrow, I'd have to start explaining things to them. We'd have to figure out how to be a family of 3 instead of 4. There would be questions, tears, difficult conversations. But tonight, for the first time in longer than I could remember, my house felt like home again. I finished my tea and headed upstairs to check on my daughters, the only 2 people in the world whose trust I'd never betray, whose security I'd never compromise, whose love I'd never take for granted. In the hallway, I paused at the spot where I'd placed Amelia's suitcase that first night, when I'd finally decided to fight back instead of just enduring. The space was empty now, clean, ready for whatever came next. I smiled and went to bed.